My on Mondays, an explorative approach to the possessive my through narratives, art, and sound. I'm Matt Bunk. This episode is part of a series on place and home called Where We Are. So this week, I asked Elena Maddy, where are we?
We are in my studio apartment in building name Redacted, at the edge of downtown Boise in the Linen District. We are in my living room, which doesn't technically exist because it is a studio, but I have this little buffet cabinet thing that I feel very proud of having used to create a separation between my bedroom and my living room. We're on my classic bisexual teal couch. And we are staring at two very large bookshelves filled with very mismatched and colorful books and many, many trinkets, and recently an assortment of paper hats, as well as some video game controllers, plants, and assorted props I have stolen and or kept from various shows that I have worked on. There are also 3 ghost candles in front of us underneath my television. Which are 3 of 9 ghost candles in this apartment. I have lived in this apartment for a year and about 5 months, and I've been in Boise for just over 4 years. I would say the first place that I considered home and still probably refer to as home in conversation with regularity is Roseville, California, which is where I am from. My parents have lived in the house that they live in right now since before I turned 2, which is kind of a crazy thing that I know very few people in the world can say. And so that is definitely like my childhood home, that physical building. And then I would still consider Roseville to be like a part of my heart in a way that it is home.
Elena left Roseville at 18 for the Bay Area.
I went to college at Santa Clara University in Santa Clara, California. I was ready to leave in terms of like the physical location and like knowing largely the same people for most of my life. And I felt like a really immediate sense of like place and belonging when I toured my college for the first time, which I was really grateful for. I also I don't know, this feels so weird to look back almost 10 years later, but like at 18, like I felt a very real calling of like, I'm gonna start my entire life over. Like I have no fear at all about like my people being far away. Like I am so ready. I was like, okay, parents, I think our relationship is going to improve radically if we do not live together. And okay, Roseville, I would like to not see you for a while and hope you improve in lots of marked ways. Like it was difficult to say goodbye to some of my best friends, but a lot of my friends went away to school at the same time or like were staying in Roseville, and therefore I knew like we had kind of a shared anchor point because everybody's families were still there. So yeah, I don't honestly remember it being particularly impactful. I think it was really lost on me at 18. Like I think there were just so many things changing that didn't really feel that monumentous, I guess. I don't know. I graduated from college in June of 2020 and didn't get to have a graduation or anything like that for obvious reasons. But my best friend at the time was also graduating that year, and he had to drive his car back here. He's from here. He had to drive his car back here from the Bay Area where we went to school in California. And he asked me if I wanted to take a little like celebratory road trip in lieu of everything else. And so I decided to go with him. And throughout the course of that little trip, I really fell in love with Boise and like the art scene here and all the nature, and just kind of like the vibe, if that makes sense. And also happened to fall in love with that person. And so we both had some stuff to finish up in the Bay. And we were there for about another year and change, and then we're looking for our next move and had been in a relationship for quite a while, and I suggested that we come here.
But leaving the Bay turned out to be a lot harder than leaving Roseville.
I think this is, like, moving to Boise, I think, is probably the most substantial, like, place shift I feel that I've experienced. And again, it was in kind of this weird, like, gray zone, just in terms of, like, I had to move back in with my parents for, like, I think, like, a month, like, a very awkward amount of time. I had just finished, like, my first professional stage management contract in Los Altos. And yeah, and it was just so, like, I don't really even know. I still, years later, like, I do not really know, like, the scope of emotions that I was experiencing. I think, like, it was partially, like, grief of, like, making a very tangible move. Like, I have a bunch of, like, stuff in storage at my folks' house, but, like, I don't live there anymore. And I wouldn't necessarily say that that was the circumstances I had, like, felt to be true for most of my college experience, even when, like, I was doing internships and staying other places, like, over breaks and summers and things. And even, like, that year after was in this really weird nebulous zone of, like, Airbnbs and, like, long-term rental type of situations. So I never felt like I didn't live at my parents' house, like, until coming here. So maybe that was part of it. And also just, like, the deep, deep fear of, like, oh, I have to be a big adult now. And, like, my family looks like something different and my life looks like something different. And that's really scary. And that's something I actively chose and I'm looking forward to. And also pulling the trigger on that is, like, so terrifying. I'm pretty sure if anyone has made any semblance of that drive before, I'm pretty sure I cried all the way to Donner Pass, which is, like, at least 90 minutes. I just remember, like, it was so hard to leave that house. Like, and my then partner was so kind and so patient, and also he was already driving us the entire way, which is, like, if you're super lucky and you're in a heavy enough car, like 8 hours, but usually closer to, like, 9.5. And we were supposed to leave, like, that morning, and now it's, like, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was just feeling, like, a lot of guilt, even though, like, I was receiving a lot of care from, like, everyone who was witnessing that in any way. Like, I felt very overwhelmingly guilty, and I also, like, I didn't understand why I was feeling that way. Like, I was so ready to leave, and it was my decision. Every element was my decision. I picked the timeline, I picked the place, I picked the, like, means of travel. Like, everything had gone my way, and I had been so involved in the planning and, like, the leader of this decision, and it still was just really, really difficult, and I was frustrated by the fact that it was hard. Like, which is silly now, looking back, but I don't know, like, I had never really experienced that kind of frustration in that way, like, that overwhelming kind of body feeling that, like, something is wrong, even though, like, I knew that nothing was. I don't know, I think there was a lot of questions, like, about whether I was doing the right thing and whether, like, I was actually gonna feel like Boise was home when, like, I had made the decision for it to be. Like, I don't know, I feel like there's a certain magic of, like, visiting somewhere, even for an extended period of time. You're able to exist in, like, all the best parts of a place when you're just a visitor, I feel like. And either because you have time or because someone is, like, showing you the highlights of a place, like, you're usually only eating the best food and only seeing the coolest places, and you don't have to do anything else. Like, the rest of your life doesn't have to fit. It's like a break. And so I think I was worried that that was the thing that I loved being able to go hiking every single day when, like, I'd never lived somewhere where it snowed. What the fuck was I doing? Like, how was I going to have all these new experiences in the course of regular life, I think was probably a big part of the panic. And I remember we drove through Donner Pass and it was snowing, and suddenly everything was okay. It was the only part of the drive that we got any weather, and yeah, I don't know, there was just, like, this very, very sudden and super cliche with the fall of snow, like, sense of peace in that moment. Like I was making the right call, and like this was like the door closing on a part of life, but like this like beautiful path opening in front of me or whatever. Or maybe I just needed an hour to calm down. Maybe I just really was just freaking out, and I needed the time to let all of that out. And then I was ready to enjoy the drive and listen to some music and eat a sandwich or something. I don't know. I think it's probably a combination of all those things. But yeah, I would definitely say that Boise is home. I've been lucky enough to feel that way about several places in my life, but this is the first place that, like, in and of itself, like, because of the place as opposed to because of, like, some sort of factor, like being born somewhere or having someone I loved there. This is probably the first place that's ever, like, felt like home before I even lived there, and I'm really grateful that feeling has endured.
I asked if there was a specific moment she knew Boise was home, and she told me this story from very early days here with that friend turned partner.
There is like this kind of still image of we were riding bikes, like he was giving me a tour of the area, and we were riding bikes, and since it was summer, the fountain in the Grove Plaza was on. And we had like this very like little kid best friend dare to like ride through the fountain and like try not to get wet, basically, like because it does the different patterns. And there was like one pattern where there was a little lane that you could theoretically ride through on a bike. And I just remember like I fully lost. I got so soaking wet. I really misjudged. But I just remember like the sun was so perfect, and there was like little crowds of people about, and we were just like laughing in the middle of the Grove Plaza, like riding a bike, and the idea of like a bikeable downtown and just like people milling about, and I don't know, like that specific type of sun is like just kind of like I can remember what I was wearing, I can remember like what the breeze felt like I feel like that has to be the moment, I guess.
It makes sense her first memory of Boise as home was on a bike, because Elena does not drive.
I always kind of lead, like, talking to people about places that I've lived by saying that, like, I could draw them a map of the streets of, like, the area that I am most familiar with. Like, I could draw you a map of downtown Boise. Like, I know the order of all of the named streets and, like, which numbers become other streets, and the kind of key landmarks at each of those corners. And I think a lot of that is because of like walking everywhere. A lot of it is also, I think, from taking the bus. Like downtown is definitely the area that I know best, and I know the North End relatively well from living there briefly and like having folks who live there who I would walk to meet. But I also like have, I feel like, a really oddly specific experience of like a few little pockets of Meridian and Nampa and Caldwell, because if you're trying to get somewhere cheap and you do not drive a car, sometimes you have to be on multiple buses for up to like 2 hours in order to go visit your friends who live far away. I don't know. Yeah, I think there is a really unique thing to like having to get somewhere differently, I guess. Like it helps me see the interconnectedness, I think, like of Boise and of the Treasure Valley and of all the places that I've lived. But also it means that like I don't really know where the cities are relative to each other because I'm not driving, so I don't have to know like east, west, north, south freeway situation. So there are often times where I'm like, what do you mean like Cuna's in this direction? That is completely news to me. I really thought it would have been picked up and placed over here on the map. So that's been really silly to discover, especially like being surrounded by loved ones here who have lived here their entire lives, and so they know like that specific large scale map thing really intimately, even if they don't know like the specific areas that I know as intimately. But yeah, I think there's something about like having to experience a place on foot specifically that it makes you discover like things you wouldn't necessarily. Like there was a period of time I was rehearsing for a show at Victory Middle School, And the closest bus stop to Victory Middle School is Overland and Blue/Black Marlin, depending on which direction you're going, which is Roaring Springs, basically. And also like the Walmart that is right there. And so I would like walk past that Walmart and walk to Victory Middle School. And there's like this beautiful park that I don't live in Meridian. I certainly never would have discovered if I wasn't walking to Victory Middle School 5 nights a week. And it's now like one of my favorite places, just like this little park with this beautiful bench that became my bench for a handful of months that I would read my little book on for like the awkward 45 minutes I had to kill before rehearsal because of the bus schedule. And I feel like I have a lot of experiences like that, like prior to moving here and since moving here. Like I'm about to reveal a secret. Anyone who listens to this is now in on an exclusive secret. At like 4th Street and Jefferson, there is a fountain that it's winter right now, so now it's just like an empty basin. But in other times, there's a fountain that I like stumbled upon one day walking back to 5th and Broad from Boise Little Theater, and it is like one of my favorite places in the world that I certainly never would have stumbled upon. It is just tucked in this most random little spot near the Chicago Connection pizza place on 4th Street, I think. I think it's in front of like the tax building, like it's in front of a municipal building of some kind. And it's just this little fountain tucked in this little rose garden. And I stumbled upon it on accident once, and then I visited it every single day. And now, like, my girlfriend and I take walks there regularly. It is where I go when I am very sad sometimes. And I cannot imagine another circumstance in which I would have come upon it, except, like, by accident because I was walking, like, downtown. So, yeah, I don't know. Little like, pockets of discovery. And also, I like knowing a place well enough. I feel like I could draw a map of it. I feel like that I don't know. I don't feel like you have to earn like calling somewhere home, but that to me feels like a really like tangible way to like hold Boise as my home when I've only lived here for such a short period.
But Elena routinely works with people living in Boise for much shorter spans. As the resident stage manager at Boise Contemporary Theater, a lot of the actors she works with are only in town for 6-week contracts.
I feel like the aspect of temporariness is just really central to, like, the art of theater making. Like, I don't know. It's definitely more difficult, like, to say goodbye to a project when like a lot of the people that you worked with on that project are like leaving the state and you have no idea when or if you'll ever see them again. Like that definitely heightens the experience, but there's a goodbye in every like theater production I've ever been a part of. Like it's something I think about often. Like there is this, I wrote a piece about it that I like drafted during my senior year of college and then like suddenly remembered when I was in a show for the first time in a long time a couple of years ago, then finally finished. Like, but there's this really, really intriguing idea to me of like the literal temporariness of like our show is closing on this day, our entire set is going to disappear within 48 hours of that. Like, we are never going to perform this show together again, more than likely. Like, no one is going to see it again. It is done. It is a closed loop, a closed entity. That stage is going to be blank again. Like, that very literal image, in conjunction with, like, there's this real, like, bubble is the word in my head, but I feel like that maybe has, like, kind of a negative connotation to some people, but like just this like protected entity, like this very like sacred type of space, like non-literal space that exists like when you're making art with people. And I think theater is an interesting instance in that like there's an intimacy that is like almost immediate when you are like seeing each other for that much time. Like, all of your outside of work time typically, like, is spent with these people, and you're making these things, and, like, you're usually, like, having some sort of vulnerable element, whether, like, depending on the story that you're telling, like, will, I guess, shape that experience. But, like, you're telling a story together. Like, you have to be in sync with each other in this unique way. Even, like, myself, I'm not an actor, I'm a stage manager, but like I always describe it as like breathing with my cast. Like, I like and feeling the heartbeat of the show, and so like getting in sync with these people in a way that like your heart is beating as one, like it breeds a certain kind of intimacy that like then all of a sudden, you know, you might not see any of these people again, and that is, I feel like, really unique and really fascinating, and also very difficult. Like, but there's also there's this tie. Like, I don't know, I kind of expected when I started working more regularly with people like who don't live in the place that I live, that the grief would be amplified, but it kind of feels the same. Like, it's weird to sometimes be like, oh, this person lives across the country from me, and like I see them on Instagram sometimes, but I may never see their human face right in front of mine, like, again in our lives, and that's insane. But that can be true of anybody. I feel like we never know when people are gonna move or anything, and at least for me, I certainly don't feel that like that barrier of living in different places is an inhibitor of establishing closeness with someone for me. Like, I'm gonna say goodbye to all of those people at the end of that process regardless. Like, even people who live around the corner from me, our lives don't exist in a structure where I get to see them 5 days a week. I have a close friend who I did theater with growing up that we get to see each other maybe like once a year now. He lives in LA, and we talk frequently about like, oh, there was a period of our lives when we were like 16 and had no idea who we were and no idea how to like be human beings with each other, where we got to see each other guaranteed once a week, and usually closer to like 5 or 6 days a week for like months at a time. And now that like we do know how to talk to each other and we do know who we are as people, like we get to see each other once a year and like a quarterly phone call maybe. And like the grief of that is something that I think has made me appreciate like the temporary like connection that I get to have in my life now. Like, oh, at least like I get to have this with these people from everywhere, and no matter how long I know them for, like we're making this beautiful thing together, and that will always be true. Like that stands in a way that is really concrete. And also like how lucky to get to be like the person that I feel like I am around all of these people. I don't know, I think about it a lot, like that idea of temporary almost being more beautiful in some ways. Like, very grateful for enduring art I've been able to make, and very grateful for enduring connections that I'm very, very lucky to have, but there is something specifically beautiful about like this thing only exists right now with us and the people who get to come see it. I think in part I've been a person who is really lucky to have had like a very constant like tangible sense of home and place. Like, I never felt explicitly like I belonged in Roseville, but like I did live there for the only part of my life that I remember prior to adulthood, and in the same house, like with the same people. And I met my childhood best friend on the first day of preschool, and she remains in my life to this day. I got to see her like a couple weeks ago. I met my now like best friend in the whole world, like my sister, my soulmate, when I was like 12. Like, and those are just like 3 very brief examples of that feeling, but like I was very lucky to never like have an actual tangible absence of like a feeling of home through both place and people. Like I always knew like my family was like a soft place to land, and that they would always be there for me like as an anchor point, and I'm lucky enough to still feel that way. But there was always this like lack or like longing of that additional element that people talk about. Like, I don't know, like I had a home and I had people who made me feel at home, but like I didn't really feel like I actually understood like home in the way that people speak about it. And I also was always really interested in the intersection between that idea of like people being home and place being home. And I think just because it was something I was always really curious about, like not even lack or longing in the sense of any sort of grief or like even like a hole in my life that I was perceiving, but just like a curiosity, like really a lot of questions, a lot of wanting to understand, like, is this just a like misinterpreting what other people are saying, or is there actually something that they have that like I haven't quite stumbled upon yet? Like, I don't know, and I still don't have the answer to that, which I think is fantastic. That delights me infinitely. But yeah, it was just something I was always really curious about. And also something that I found myself speaking about a lot as something that was really important to me and as something that I experienced in a lot of variable contexts. And so it just kind of became the thing. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say that someone could read a collection of my work and come to the same conclusion I have, which is that, like, my little bio quote is usually, like, when she writes about home. I don't necessarily know that someone else would feel that way, but I don't know. I feel like writing about, like, being in nature or falling in love or thinking about death or, like, any kind of connection to the self, like, I feel like those are all, like, meditations on home for me. And yeah, I don't know, there have been a couple people in my life at various points, like, who I talk about drawing the circle with, like the idea you're tracing the same idea over and over and over again, like kind of trying to find like that answer, but like you don't ever want to find the answer, you just want to keep drawing the circle. I feel like that concept of home is that for me. I had a professor in college who would always, his like prompt for himself would be, what's the next question? Which I always really liked. And I think I've never been able to come up with a question that is more specific than like, what does it mean to be home? Like, what is home? Yeah, so that's like, it's not something I'm actively asking myself every time that I'm writing, but anytime I reread anything that I've written, I'm like, oh, drawing the circle again, asking the question, like finding that definition of home in this exact moment for me.
My On Mondays is brought to you by Ming Studios, a contemporary art space and international artist residency program in Boise, Idaho. Where We Are is a series on place. For more information about Ming's programming, or if you'd like to participate in My On Mondays, you can visit our website at mingstudios.org. We'll be back next Monday.